Okay, I see we got some participants here. Welcome today, everybody. We've got a lot of people signed up, so we're going to wait a couple of minutes. It's 3:29 right now. Thanks for joining us, though. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. A lot of things, and just so you guys know who came in early, there's going to be a lot of material not even in the slides because I've got here in front of me another 3 pages of information that just came out today, so we weren't able to get those into the slides. And if you're in early, why don't you go ahead and hit in the chat where you're from, because we got people from all over. I know that, so if you can just hit in what city you're from, city or state, so I can get an idea that you can hear me and that we can get an idea where some people I know, and then I know there's other people here I do not know. So if you just, like I said, hit on the chat if you can, where you're from. Good. Tennessee, Crofton. Okay. Thanks, guys. And I see we got some other people joining us. We're kind of like loading up here real quick. So we're going to wait about another minute, and then we'll Pasadena, I see that. And just so you know, you won't really have to take much in the way of notes. I'll give you some follow-up information from this as well. We're scheduled to go 45 minutes, but if you want to hang around, there's other questions at the end. I can stay up to an hour if we need to. So once again, if you just joined us, go ahead and just type in for me if you can in the chat where you're from, so we can see what cities we're in here, and that would be great. I see somebody from Berkeley, California. There we go. And I'm just looking at some of the names. I know some people here. Hollywood, Florida. Excellent. Tennessee. Good. Washington, Annapolis. Fantastic. Okay, well, thanks a lot for joining me today, and we're going to be fast-paced today. We're going to roll right through this, and we're really just going to focus on the stuff that you need to do now, okay? So we're going to talk about effectively 4 main things today. First thing, and these are things you've heard about already. We're going to first hit the Family First Response Act. That's the one that requires certain leave to be provided. We're going to secondarily hit the CARES Act. That's a Coronavirus Response Act. And then we're going to also hit the PPP, the Payment Protection Program, which is something that just got passed as well. And then some of the state relief that's available. So that's what we're going to go over today. And we're just going to roll through this relatively quickly. And if you have questions, just put them up here in the chat box. I know we have had several questions beforehand, and we will try to hit those right out of the chute. Questions like, how do you handle employees? What do you have to prove to get some of these loans? We'll cover all that today. And once again, if there's any other questions afterwards, you have this afternoon or tomorrow, please feel free to email me and we'll be happy to answer those for you. My staff here, we're all available for you, and we want to help. We're in total help mode here. I'm personally working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, because there's just a lot of issues and a lot of hurting people. A lot of people need some help, and need help with some of these gut-wrenching decisions. So we want to be available to you. So, this whole bailout is going to cost, you heard probably 2.3 trillion, but this is going to really cost at least 3 trillion. It's hard to even throw around those numbers, right? Or even 4 trillion when all is said and done. So it's very big. And the new legislation is huge. I can't even tell you how big it is. It's huge. 800 pages, very complex. It hits a lot of things. And part of the problem is they don't really have the infrastructure to handle this. But we're going to try to get our hands around part of this. We're just going to focus on the things that you can use, okay? So first thing I want to talk about before we get into the meat of this is, hey, make sure you're taking care of yourself. That's important. That's really important. Because it's tough times right now. As we were saying in here earlier today, that most people are walking around with their cup like 5/6 full just because of the environment. right? And then when your cup is full and it's something not great goes into it, it's easy to overflow and have problems, whether there's physical problems or whether you just lash out at somebody and don't act the way you want to. It's important that we take care of ourselves physically, spiritually as well. That's really big. That's really big. So I just encourage you to do that because I'm sure you're busy. I'm sure you got lots of things you're dealing with too. So this is the COVID-19 economic update webinar. Now, as you can see, this next slide is going to show you something I can't even hardly believe we have in our country. Let me just get that. There we go. But, people walking around in masks. I had a funny story. Somebody told me the other day. They said they were in their car, and right next to them was another car, and there were two people with masks like this on. The funny part was one of them had the mask pulled down so they could continue to smoke, which was just absolutely hilarious. I just love that story. I think, Terry, you're on here, and thanks for forwarding that. I've probably repeated it 6 times since. So that's an unusual situation, very unusual what's going on. But I think there's a message that we got to take out of this. There's been so much negativity. The stock market has been down. Our retirement plans are down. A lot of us have had to furlough or are thinking about furlough or laying off workers. It can cause us to have paralysis. It's overwhelming to some extent. But what I want you to think about is that this is a sign really you've been looking for. I mean, this is this is the sign you've been looking for. And I'm going to tell you today, if I can just encourage you, move forward. We have got to move forward. This is the new reality. Things are not going back the way they were. Our culture has changed through this. And I don't think we're going back. I'm just going to hold on to my business through this. Things are going to change. And I would encourage you to think about how are you going to change. There's a lot of good things that the government has here, but these are just short-term fixes, right? And I think there are some very good things, better things than we've ever seen for small business. If you think about in the past, what was happening is people who were irresponsible were rewarded. In 2008, there were really 2 groups that were rewarded. Number one, big companies who made too risky loans or other risky investments. Okay, they were rewarded, they were bailed out. And number 2, people who borrowed and got mortgages irresponsibly, and they were bailed out as well. But people who were responsible didn't get bailed out. Now this time, what I like about this package is there's a good piece of it that is for closely held businesses, people like you all. And that's a good thing. We haven't done anything irresponsible, but there is some kind of help. And we're going to talk about that. Some of that help is really remarkable. So we're going to go ahead and move on here. This next picture I want to show you, it's kind of crass, but I think it's true. We got to wake up, kick ass, be kind, and repeat, and because we're in wartime right now. And I think it's important to think about that, that we are in wartime and we have no choice. We have got to move forward. We have got to spend all of our time moving forward. That's very, very important. So let's move to the Family First Corona Response Act. Okay, that's something that was put into place on March 18th, and it requires you to provide paid sick leave and paid family and medical leave for certain people. Okay, and it provides tax credits for that paid leave. Now, it's an expansion of the unemployment situation. They went to no waiting period on that. And we're going to talk a little later about unemployment because that's important to know what your employees will be able to get if you do have to furlough or lay them off. Okay, so moving on here. This applies to businesses with less than 500 employees, everybody less than 500 employees. And this is where there's been a lot of misinformation, okay? So businesses with less than 50 can apply for an exemption, okay, but only if it would jeopardize the viability of the business. We don't know exactly how that, because it hasn't come out yet, exactly how you apply for that exemption. And I wouldn't automatically assume that you're going to get it. Okay. So as we move forward, this applies to, hey Josh, can we go to the next slide? There we go. Okay. This is basically FMLA, if you remember, the Family Medical Leave Act. Now, if you're under 50 employees, you probably aren't that familiar with it because you didn't have to go along with that. You didn't have to follow that law. But this is what the new law is. And this applies to you. Remember, if you're under 50, you could possibly get an exemption, but I would not assume right out of the chute that we've got it. It provides employees up to 10 weeks of paid family medical leave. Okay. And employers are required to offer employees unpaid leave for 10 days, unpaid for 10 days, and then paid leave. Now the paid leave is 14 days, and that's over and above what you typically offer as far as paid time off or sick time or vacation time. So this is an additional 14 days, but there are certain specific stipulations as to how they can use it, how they can do it. Now, people receive 2/3 of their regular pay, as you can see here, and the pay leave maxes out at $200 per day or $10,000 total over 10 weeks. Hey, I saw somebody asked about turning up the volume. Can we just if anybody has any volume problems, just go ahead and put that in the chat for me. But I think we've got that all fixed. Excuse me. So these are the reasons why you would have to offer this additional sick leave. Government quarantine, we know what that is, like if they're forced quarantine or if their doctor tells them to self-quarantine. Now we have a client that just had that last week, and so it's a real issue. Now there's some squishy ones here, has the symptoms of COVID-19 and is seeking a medical diagnosis. That's a little gray as to whether they would qualify for that or not. Somebody the other day said, hey, what about if somebody just fears that they have this? Well, the fear doesn't qualify, but the fear is probably, to me, right up next to this issue of having symptoms and seeking medical diagnosis. So you got to be careful. And realize these laws just went into play today. Yes, February, listen to me, April 1st, first day they just went into existence. So if you've got anybody with these situations, I would really encourage you to talk to an HR attorney, because you don't want to run into problems. And we just had a real life situation just the other day, had a kind of a problem employee with one of our clients who was out, and she didn't really explain why she was out. And she said she was getting a test, and the test kind of never came back, supposedly, right? And some of the emails she sent out were kind of like legal, looked like she was like lawyering up kind of thing. So it was important that we get all the details right, because we want to make sure we're doing what we should be doing. Also, they can get this extra leave if they're caring for a family member because of COVID-19, or caring for children if the schools are closed, or if the caregiver is unavailable because of COVID-19. So it's a pretty, some of these things are pretty squishy. It's pretty broad as far as who can qualify for this. So as I said, it's up to 80 hours of paid sick leave for full-time people. Part-time people will receive partial pro rata share of that based on the average 2 weeks period. So for an average 2 week period, they're half time, they would get half of the 80 hours or 40 hours. Max $511 a day, $51.10 is the total. And there's some other further limitations as well. So if you got something here, you want to make sure you get it, look into all the details. And that's one thing about everything we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give you some details today. Other details I'm not going to give you because there's just not enough time to do that. But most of the details we don't know yet. They don't have the infrastructure in place. This is the first time they've done a lot of these things. So we're not going to have the details on a lot of these as far as the how-to. Some we will. And once again, as I told you, we got 3 pages here of additional things that just were added today. And once again, that's addition. This extra 14 days is addition to sick leave or paid time that you typically offer. Now let's talk about there's also something called the Emergency Unemployment Insurance Stabilization Act. That gives more money to unemployment. They're really expanding unemployment, and there should be a 1 week waiting period. They don't have that anymore. So if you have somebody who can apply, they can get benefits right away. They're really loosening that up. And there's like almost no requirement for work search proof at this point. Okay. So just give you some perspective, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I'll say it now. So in most states, the typical state unemployment is the max is about $400 a week. Now, the CARES law, which we'll talk about later, that adds another $600 a week. So right now, people could get up to $1,000 a week in unemployment. That's awfully generous. And, you know, we probably have, you know, the average American makes about $52,000 to $53,000 a year. So that's like for a lot of people, maybe a lot of your employees, that would be more than they would make with you. So I don't know if I exactly like that, but it is what it is. And it is very generous for people right now. And that will hopefully keep some kind of money going into our economy. Okay, so that covers the first thing, the Family First Response Act. Now we're going to talk about the CARES Act. This is the one that was just passed Friday. Congress was dithering with this thing for about a week, but they finally passed it Friday. I think it was signed Friday night, and it's called the CARES Act for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. So it's brand spanking new last Friday night. And let's go to the next slide if we can there, Josh. Yeah. So is it $1 million? No, it's not $1 million. We're talking minimum $2.3 trillion. This is huge. I can't say that enough. This is huge, like nothing we've ever seen before. So we're going to pay for this for a long time later, but hopefully it helps us now. Hopefully we get our economy going again and moving in the right direction very quickly. And beyond that, hopefully, obviously, we get some medical cure or treatment, or able to get this thing under control. Because I heard just yesterday, we're talking about these numbers of 100 to 240,000 people dead. That's just remarkable. So let's talk about some individual things first. I'll just take a couple of minutes and talk about that. You've probably heard about this. Checks for individuals, $1,200 per person, $500 per child. Now there are phase outs. So if you're single, the phase outs start at $75,000 in what they call adjusted gross income. That's from your tax return. And if you're over $99,000 as a single, you don't get anything. For married couples, similar phase out, it starts at $150 and goes all the way to $198. So if you're at $198 in adjusted gross income, you're not going to get any check on this. And so it's kind of set for, you know, lower to middle class people to join in on this. So as we move on here, let's talk a little more about this. There are some other personal things as well. First of all, withdrawals from, if you can withdraw money this year from a retirement plan, that's if it's related to coronavirus, right, for up to $100,000 with no 10% penalty. So if you have money in your IRA or your 401k and you need money for your business or whatever it might be, you can draw down up to $100,000, no penalty at all. And the taxes on this are over 3 years. So you get taxed a third this year, next year, and the following year. And you can put the money back within 3 years and not pay the tax. Okay, so if you need money, pay up to $100,000, a pension plan is a way to do it. Also, if you're over 70 and you have required minimum distributions from your IRA, those are going to be waived for 2020. So I want to quickly move on from this. Further expansion of unemployment, as I said, they add another $600 per week for benefits. So people could get, you know, $1,000 potentially per week with unemployment. Also, self-employed people can get this. I think this is for the first time ever. So if you're self-employed or know somebody who's self-employed, they could, and their business effectively goes down the toilet, they could get unemployment benefits up to 4 months. The federal government extends this this is with the new CARES Act, for another 13 weeks. So that takes us, I think, all the way up to the end of the year. So once again, very generous on unemployment, far-reaching. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Now the PPP loans. This is something that just came out Friday night. Payment Protection Program loans, okay? PPP loans. So here's the deal. This is it's an incentive to keep workers, and it's a subsidy to keep workers employed. That's the whole idea, okay? They want you to keep workers employed. And if you've already, like restaurants and other people have been really hit hard, if you've already laid off people, you could bring them back within 30 days, and you could still qualify for this. It doesn't mean you can't, if you've already laid them off, and you can bring them back or furloughed them, you can bring them back within 30 days, and you can still get the benefits of this, okay? So it's quite good. If workers remain employed, you can be forgiven up to 8 weeks of payroll. Now, these loans, you have to go to a bank. It's brand spanking new, came out Friday. No banks know how to do this yet. I've probably talked with 10 banks since Sunday, okay, and they are not ready. That goes from Bank of America to the local banks. They're just not ready yet. I talked to somebody at a mid-sized bank, and he said that they have typically in a year, they do 500 SBA loans. This is an SBA loan, but you apply for it through your bank. And they said they typically do 500 loans a year. And in the first 2 days, they already have 1,500 applications. Okay, so that was Monday and Tuesday. So banks are overwhelmed with this. They don't have the infrastructure in place. The SBA doesn't have the infrastructure in place. They're moving really quickly. But there are some good things about these loans. First thing, it can be forgiven. Okay. And what I'm going to tell you right off the bat, what I recommend everybody do is apply for both the PPP loan, okay, and then also the SBA disaster loan. We'll talk about the SBA disaster loan later. But my recommendation is to do both. No matter what your situation is. And if you get approved for them, you can always reject it later if you want to, okay? But you want to find out what you can get, and there are some good things here for businesses. So they're 100% guaranteed by the U.S. government. No SBA fees. This is up to $10 million. And also, there is no personal guarantee. These are non-recourse loans, okay? That's important. We can go to the next slide here. This is for companies. This is not on the slides. And I'll be saying some things that are not on the slides because I got some updates. These PPP loans are for people who have no more than 500 employees, and that includes if you have affiliated companies, you have to add them all together. If the common ownership is more than 20%. So if you have 4 companies, all have 200 employees, and they're affiliated with 20% common ownership, you could not do this because you would be considered to have over 500 employees. You can get up to 2.5 months or 250% of the average monthly payroll costs. Okay. Now that's just not payroll. You can see it includes these other things as well. If you look on the screen here, salary, wages, commissions, tips, vacation, parental sick leave, health insurance as well. Okay. It can cover health insurance and retirement benefits. So that's excellent. So that's the amount. This is a little complicated, but I want to break it down. This is the amount you can get. Okay. You get 2.5 months of cash flow to pay for these things. 2.5 months, $10 million max. Now, as we move on, it can be forgiven as well. Okay. But the question on forgiveness is a whole separate issue. As we move on here, there's some things you got to think about as far as what kind of compensation will qualify for that 2.5 months. Okay, first thing, if people owner compensation over 100,000 doesn't count. So if you are an owner and you make 300,000, only the first 100,000 can qualify under this program. And even if you're not an owner, this is something that we just came up with since we put these together. So anybody over 100,000, you have somebody making 180,000, their portion that would qualify for this is 100,000. Okay. So if you're going to get it, if you can get it forgiven, okay, here's what you can use it for. Okay. So the amount you can get 2.5 months, that could be the amount of the loan, 2.5 months of payroll and those related things we just talked about. That's how much you can get. It's a loan to start off with, right? But then it can be forgiven based on some of these criteria. So long as you use the proceeds for payroll, mortgage interest, rent, utilities, and I got some other things I've added to this: group health insurance, transportation, internet service, phone service, things of that nature. So ultimately the idea would be you could get a loan and maybe all of it, most of it or all of it could be forgiven. Now, 10 years is the maximum term. So if whatever is left over and is still a loan, it's still not a bad deal. It's 10 years, 4%, locked in at 4%, zero loan fees, zero SBA fees. And once again, no prepayment fees. That's important because a lot of SBA loans have prepayment fees that come along with them. Now, here's the key on the PPP loan. You got to know this. This is not on the slides, but you need to know this. This is very, very important. You're going to have to sign a certification under penalty of perjury. That means, hey, if I'm signing this thing, if this is not true, I've committed perjury. Okay, so it's a big deal. You don't want to sign this willy-nilly. Certification under penalty of perjury of economic uncertainty of the future of your company. So is there economic uncertainty as to whether you're going to go forward? I personally would say most businesses, if not all, would qualify for that, just because of the water we're swimming in right now. This whole environment is completely uncertain. The market, last time I checked, was down another 900 points, 950 points today. You guys, some people are quarantined. I think we would probably all qualify for that. You also have to keep the same number of employees. So if you had 100 employees, you got to keep 100 employees. You can't let people go and still participate in this forgiveness program. Now, you can reduce the payroll rates, because some people are doing that to kind of keep more people on. They're saying, okay, well, we're going to cut everybody 20%, let's say, or everybody 15% to try to keep more people on the payroll. But to be able to qualify for the forgiveness, for people under $100,000, you can't reduce their pay by more than 25%. Okay, so you can reduce it up to 25% for your people who make under $100,000 and still get the forgiveness. So let's see, no personal guarantee. We talked about that. That's important. And also, whatever's not forgiven, there's a payment deferral of 6 to 12 months. So this is really a pretty good deal. One thing you want, remember I said it doesn't have any personal guarantee, and this is through a bank. So you're going to work with a local banker, maybe the bank you work with, or another bank. They will put this together for you. Don't go to the SBA for this. You go right to your banker, and I'd get in line right now. I'd start calling your bank today, because there's going to be a huge backlog. Now, so when it's all said and done, though, treat this like any other bank loan, and make sure you have it reviewed by the attorneys as well, because there's going to be a lot of fraud involved in these loans, because this money is just like a big spigot they've turned on. But here's the thing you want to watch out for. It's not supposed to be personally guaranteed, but you have all these banks around the country who are doing these loans, and the SBA mandates certain portions of the paperwork. But you want to make sure that that the local bank, your bank that gives this to you, doesn't add anything in there about personal guarantees. So you want to make sure you have a good lawyer, good business lawyer review this for you. That's important. Now, some things you're going to need. This is, once again, brand new, not on the slides, but I'm just going to tell you what it is. Now, you can apply up to June 30th, so you want to get hopping on this right away. And there are some things you need. There's basically 5 things you need. I'm going to tell you this. And all these details you can get from us if you want to. We're here to help you with all this, but there's 5 things you're going to need. You can get these things together right now. You might as well. So when your banker's ready to go, you're ready to go. First thing, 2019 940, which is your annual unemployment report, 941s for the whole year, or 944 if you file this. So your payroll tax reports, quarterly payroll tax reports for the entire year, and your 940 filed at the end of 2019. So you're going to need those ready to go. I'd get them in PDF format, ready to go. You can do that today or tomorrow. Next thing, you're going to need 12 months of your payroll reports, going back 12 months from your last payroll. Okay, so that's not calendar year. That's going to be actual year. So let's see, if we put in this week, it would be as of last Friday, and the 12 months previous to that. And you got to follow that exactly, because remember, this is the government. They got some goofy rules. So don't think, well, this is close enough. Get it right. It's important, because you want to get in there and get your money as soon as possible. You're going to need to provide them with all the 1099s for any independent contractors that you have. You're going to have documentation showing the total of all the health insurance amounts paid to owners. Okay, that's important. Once again, there's some unusual things they're asking for, but you got to have them. So that would be for the owner's health insurance for last year. Okay, that's important. And also we're going to have detail on the retirement plan funding that was paid to the company owner last year as well. So that's important. So those are the things you're going to need right off the bat. 5 things. I recommend you do those pretty much right away. So now we're back to the slides. I apologize, we didn't have slides for those, but that's brand spanking new. So let's see, forgiveness provided if you've got 8 weeks to use this money up compared to the previous year for the things we talked about earlier. If you use for this expenses, that they told you could use it for. So those would be 2 months payroll, rent, group health insurance, utilities, transportation, internet, and phone. Now I got a question here. With a $100,000 cap, how would that work if an owner is paid a salary under that $100,000? Okay, if that's the case, then that fully qualifies. If let's say the owner makes $80,000 in salary, really, this is not distributions. If you're an S corporation owner or a partnership owner, we're just talking about salary, the things that you pay payroll taxes on. And it would be on your W-2, because a lot of people are going to be S corps probably, and they're going to take the salary and draws. Draws don't count for this. Okay, just the salary. If the salary is over 100, you can only count the first 100. But then the business profits over and above that are also considered income on personal tax returns. Yes, the net income of the S corporation is not included in that, so you don't have to count that towards 100,000 at all. So thanks for the question. Yeah, I know somebody said the slides are not advancing because some of the stuff we don't have slides for, so I apologize about that. So we can go to the next, but we can go to the next slide. Okay. So remember, that was the PPP program. Okay, you can get with your banker right away. If you need a banker, you don't have somebody, feel free to reach out to us. We'll hook you up with somebody. You got to get a bank. That's how you apply for that. Okay, it's an SBA. This is where it's confusing. They're both SBA loans, but totally different types and totally different ways to apply. That's important to know. PPP, they can both be, you can use both, and I recommend that you do both, okay? And you can reject either one of them at the last, once you find out what the details are, once you've been approved, okay? So two different things. The PPP is an SBA loan that goes through your bank. PPP equals bank, okay? You gotta go to your bank. And they're not even ready for it yet, right? But they'll be ready soon. But you can get in line with your banker now, so you're ready to go. Let's see, I got another question here. If it's anticipated that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount may be for, I don't really catch that. If you want to, Nicole, if you want to give me a little more information on that, I'll be happy to answer it for you. Or at the end, I'll answer it. So they're using this loan is the economic injury disaster relief loans, okay? Now they're using this is a loan directly from the SBA, right from the government. You don't go, bank is not involved in this, okay? Two loans, remember PPP, bank, economic disaster loans, that you go right to the IRS, and only one, IRS, listen to me, sorry, SBA. And you go right to sba.gov. Now, if you've been following my updates, and we do a 2-minute update about every 2 days these days on the latest things that are going on. I was complaining about the SBA website. It was horrible. It was crashing. It was slow. It was horrific. However, Monday morning, they put up a new site, and this is the new site, okay? And it is actually easy and simple. And as part of this, not only can you put in for the loan, you can also put in for a $10,000 advance on that loan, and supposedly you get that within 3 days. So if you haven't done this, now if you followed on the old program, you don't have to, file again. You're still in line. So this is where you want to go for that. Let's go back to the previous slide if we can here again. So this whole idea here, this is what they used for like a Puerto Rico situation where they had a big hurricane. So they weren't really set up, but I think they're in a much better situation now. So let's go ahead and roll on. As you can see, that's where you want to go. So these loans, remember, this is loaned directly from SBA. You have to apply on their website. Do it immediately. If you haven't done it yet, do it right away and ask for the $10,000 ahead of time, okay? Max loan here is $2 million, 3.75 rate, very low, term of 10 years, up to 10 years. I think most people would get the 10-year loan, and these are direct loans. And you can also apply for this and the PPP together. And I recommend you do both. Remember, you want to do the PPP and the disaster relief. PPP is with a bank. Disaster relief is directly with the SBA. Now, there also are some pretty good tax benefits out of this, but let me make perfectly clear. These are secondary. The primary things you want to look at are going to be the PPP and the economic disaster relief loan. Those two loans are the ones is what you're going to look at. And then you're going to look at state options, because most of the states have a lot of good things too. Today, we're only going to talk about Maryland because we've got about 50% of our clients are here in Maryland, but we have clients all around the country, and we know we have the information on all the states. So if you don't know, reach out to us and we'll get you all the details, but there's some similarities in those. So now we're going to talk about some of the tax provisions. There are some tax credits for 50% of the wages paid to certain employees. And this would apply to like a situation where it's probably like a restaurant would be good for this, because your operations must have been fully or partially suspended because of the government limiting commerce, travel, or group meetings. So if they say you can't have sit-down restaurants, that kind of obliterates restaurants. And that's one of the sad stories in this one of many sad stories here. And you must experience a greater than 50% loss in quarterly receipts as compared to last year. Now, this is not available if you do the PPP. And I think most people are better off with the PPP. You want to look at it, but I think, although this sounds great, I think the PPP is probably going to be better for most people. So let's see. Also, now this applies to everybody. This is an important piece here. Okay, so going forward, you can defer the employer portion of your payroll taxes through 2020. So this is from April 1st to the end of the year. For payroll taxes, the company pays half of those payroll taxes and the employee pays half of them. Okay. Now there's no change for the employee portion, but on the employer portion, you can delay that and not send that in yet. And you'll accumulate that between now and the end of the year. And let's just say that totals $200,000 at the end of the year that you have not paid in. Okay. Totally legal. You defer that and you pay it in two payments. So on that $200,000, you'd pay $100,000 at the end of 2021. So that's not this year, that's next year. And then the other $100,000 would be paid at the end of 2022. So it's quite the deferral that's available there. Now, one other thing that I don't think is in our slides, excuse me, is that a lot of health insurance companies, and health insurance is usually a big benefit for most of our clients, health insurance companies are deferring payments as well. I know we have Care First here in Maryland. We'll defer up to 2 months of your health insurance, even though you still have coverage. They'll defer that and they'll split that over the rest of the months in the year. So that might be something you might want to look at too. But once again, you got to ask for that. You got a certain letter. If you need help with that, just let us know. Okay. So moving on here, we're going to talk about these Maryland laws too. This is something else you got to do today. This as soon as possible. It's really important. And if I didn't hit this, by the way, I want to make sure that both of these programs, the PPP and the disaster relief, they can both be turned into grants or forgiven loans. Okay, both of those. That would be my idea. I don't think for most people it really makes much sense to go ahead and borrow money to pay payroll while you're closed or while your business is in a downturn. It just, you're just mortgaging your future, and it's going to be a big hole to climb out of. So what I would recommend, and we've applied for these loans too, we're going to apply for the PPP, is that you get the loans and turn them into grants or forgive or have them forgiven, right? That's really the only thing that I think makes much sense here for most people. There may be some reason some people want to extend it out over 10 years. But remember, both of these, the PPP and the economic disaster loans, can be forgiven based on a little bit different situations here. Okay, a little different details. So now we're going to talk about some things you want to do as well. First thing you want to do is you want to go to this, if you're in Maryland, you can go to the Maryland Business Express. If you just put that into Google, you'll get to the right place. Click on the small business COVID-19 relief. It'll take you to two things that are really important. There's 3 programs, 2 that you're probably going to want to apply for. The first one is the emergency relief loan. That's no interest or principal for the first 12 months. It converts to a 36-month term loan, and it's got a 2% interest rate. Okay, so that's really pretty low. I'd apply for it and just see what they offer you back. And the next one here is the one that you want to do right away. I would encourage everybody to do in Maryland. And this is a grant program. Okay, you can do it, once again, you do this right on the website, and you use more or less the same application for both the loan and this grant. It's right on the website, the Maryland Business Express website. It's pretty easy to do. You do need some information, like you're going to need to know your unemployment number. You're going to also need to know your federal ID number and some other information. This is a $50 million fund. Max grant is $10,000. So I would get that in right away. $50 million is not a lot of money for the state of Maryland. So get this in. You might as well get your $10,000. Now, there's also this emergency relief manufacturing fund. If your company manufactures PPE equipment like gloves or masks or face masks, things of that nature, that's what that's for. But if you don't do that, this is not for you at all. So let's go to the next question. Somebody asked a question, and I appreciate all the questions. Somebody asked questions about payroll tax forms. For the first quarter, payroll tax forms are all due. There's been no change to that. Okay, so you probably have heard that individual tax returns have been changed to July 15th, and almost everything from April 15th has been changed to July 15th, except payroll forms, same, there's no change in that whatsoever. So you still have to file your first quarter of payroll tax reports. That would be your 941s, your state unemployments, and things of that nature. Okay, as we're moving forward, I'm just checking the time. If we can kind of get the next slide up here, just give me a second, guys. Okay, so let me ask you a question. So what if you're a Maryland corporation, but not living in Maryland? That is a great question. I do not know the answer to that at this point, but I can definitely get back to you that. Now, you know, this is important now we move forward. And the reality of this is that we're doing this for our kids. There's two cute little boys here, right? We're doing it for our kids and grandkids. That's the important thing. I would just encourage you to get activated in your business. Move forward on these. Don't push it off at all. There's a lot of good help that's out there, and it's important that we go ahead and move forward. There are a lot of things you can do at this point in time. You can apply for these, and then also you can get an emergency plan. Okay, we're planning here for this thing to be like we're right now in Maryland. We're in a stay-at-home order. Now, our business, I'm in our offices right now. About half our people are here, half people are at home. But I'm planning on this kind of situation here to be for at least 8 weeks. It might be longer, but I think you need to be think through how long you think this is going to be, and why don't you need to get an emergency plan to see how long your cash is going to last. You need to apply for all this stuff, but realize none of this except the $10,000 advance from the SBA is going to get here soon. I don't care what the politicians say. There's a lot of administration involved. And let's say if you could get a loan within 3 to 5 weeks from now, I think that would be fantastic. Okay, maybe they've proved me wrong, but I don't think so. I've been doing this for 30 some years and working with the SBA and the government. I don't think so. So we're gonna have to wait on a lot of this stuff, right? But in the meantime, what can we do? We need to be thinking about what's our emergency plan going forward. And my recommendation is first think through, look at the medical write-ups and see what do you think is going to happen. You know, how long do you think this is going to be? Is it going to be 8 weeks? Is it going to be 12 weeks? What do you have to plan for? And then get kind of like an emergency projection to see, okay, well, how long is my current cash going to last? And right now, cash is king. I want to think about, do you have a line of credit? You know, if you do have a line of credit, you might want to think about drawing down on that, even if you don't need it right now. Rates are low. I mean, you're probably paying, somewhere between, 3 and 6% on your line of credit. We're having a real economic trouble here. Some people are worried that some of these lines of credit could be shut down. I just heard of somebody last week, one bank shutting down their line of credit because they didn't have it taken out. So you might want to think about, do you draw down on some of your lines of credit? Some big companies have done that. Big companies have done that. They did a few weeks ago because they saw some of the turmoil going on. So you might want to think about that. Do you want to draw down on money even if you don't need it right now? Think about suspending your 401k match. That might be something that you want to do if you're really in an emergency situation. You can do that. You've got to talk to your third-party administrator about that, but you could do that. So if we move on to the next, things have been really hard, right? And but I just encourage you to move forward. One day we're going to be back to this. We were back, and this was how we were living for the last couple of years, a lot of us, right? Some version of this. And right now this seems absolutely absurd. It was all travel is shut down. We had a trip. My wife and I had a trip scheduled for April 18th to go to a beautiful place like this. And we would probably be in a situation like this. That's not happening, right? And that's the reality. But you know what? We're going to be back to days like that sometime in the future. However, at the same time, I want to encourage you to think about things are not going to go back to normal, right? If you're thinking, hey, I'm just trying to hang on to my business and keep it going until this is over, I think that's a bad strategy. Our culture has had so many changes related to this. I want you to really think about that. What is the new normal? Think about how many times you've done video calls like this, and think about, you realize how much you went out to eat and how much we went out to the mall and shop and things like that, all the things we can't do right now. That's not all going to go back to normal, once this coronavirus kind of goes down. It's going to take some time. There's going to be also a lot of new normals. So I would encourage you to look at your business with a fresh sheet of paper to see how can we do things differently. What's our new plan? The people who are going to do well are the ones who are not paralyzed, but are moving forward. So I'm going to see if we got any other. I think we got some questions here as well. I'm going to hit those, and I've got some time for questions. I know we're running out of our standard time here is done, but we are going to go ahead and hit any questions that we have. So if you have any questions, you want to put them up right now. Yeah, Sandy, that's right. That can be a grant. Everything, both loans we talked about can ultimately end up being as a grant, and that would be the idea that I'd be looking for there as well. I would, if you're getting our updates, I'd encourage you to watch them. We're going to do them every 2 days, 2 to 3 days, based on what's needed, and things are coming really fast and furious at this point. I'm going to end just by once again encouraging you to take care of yourself. I have this saying that I say that, if I'm no good, I'm no good to anybody else. A lot of us in our lives have a lot of people that depend on us, our team, our family, kids, grandkids, and that's all great, right? And if I'm not taking care of myself, I certainly can't take care of anybody else. So I just encourage you. The times are stressful right now. I stay away from the news. Geez, all you hear is negativity on the news. Limit that. Try to limit yourself, because it will tend to paralyze you. So keep an eye. If you don't get our updates, you can go ahead and sign up for them on our website. If you want to pass those along, you can. I'll go ahead and have some other material that'll come out to you probably within the day or so. And thanks an awful lot for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.